The world's a pretty big place. With our busy lives, no reasonable person can be expected to keep up with the biggest headlines each week, so I'm here to do it for you. This is Tony Pearson coming to you on behalf of WHIP with this week's Big Picture. It is spring break here at Temple, and keeping with the trend toward strange weather, about a foot of snow is right around the corner. I'm personally quite excited as I love the cold and the snow that comes along with it. Winter's just about over, and honestly, we haven't exactly gotten much of either snow or cold. So for me, it's going to be really nice to just kind of watch it all come down the next day or so. I mean, we'll see what actually happens. We're expecting 8 to 12 inches here in Philly, and at least that much farther north. But for some reason, whenever we get storms down here in Philly, I feel like we always get half of what we're told we're going to get. So I don't know. I'll be happy with half a foot, 6 inches, just enough snow to play in. That's all I want. I just want some snow. We didn't get any for Christmas. We didn't get any for, well, we didn't really get much at all. Except for like right before spring break started. We also got a bunch of snow earlier. It's just weird weather. Anywho, seeing as it is spring break and it is snowy and all that stuff, I'm going to make this a shorter, sweeter episode. But we do have one topic, actually, just one big topic to talk about. And I'm not even going to get super analytical with it because this all just came out. This is something that's being talked about a lot in the news now, and I would imagine is going to be talked about a lot more in the coming days and weeks. That is right. For those of you who've guessed it already, we're going to be talking about the bills introduced this past week by House Republican leadership to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. This legislation, like I just said, is all very new right now, and reports on its potential efficacy and shortcomings are still in the works. With that said, I'm going to try to cover the most important points, the basics about what is actually changing, so that you can form your own opinions and kind of go into it understanding that as you read the stories that I'm sure are going to be all over the place in the next couple of days, weeks, etc. First and foremost, these proposed bills do not actually repeal the Affordable Care Act. In fact, it leaves in the bulk of the Affordable Care Act's original provisions, specifically those affecting Medicare, quality of care, program integrity, workforce reform, and so on. Even more importantly, it does not repeal the Affordable Care Act's requirements that health plans cover pre-existing conditions, guarantee availability and renewability of coverage, cover adult children under 26, and the existence of caps for out-of-pocket expenditures. Those, at least as far as we've seen so far, will remain the way that they are. Additionally, it does not repeal the Affordable Care Act's provisions against health status underwriting, which gets back into the whole pre-existing conditions thing, and it also doesn't change its prohibitions of lifetime and annual limits. Of course, discrimination on the basis of race, nationality, disability, age, or sex will also remain banned. So, what actually will change? Well, it's a somewhat short list, but they're all major points. First, and probably least surprising, is the individual mandate. Under the new bill, the individual mandate, which was a law requiring those who can afford it either buy insurance or pay a tax penalty, will be done away with. This part of the law was designed to keep insurance affordable for individuals who cost more to insure, specifically the elderly or sick, by forcing healthy individuals in the majority to pay into the system. Having a large pool of healthy contributors is, after all, how insurance offsets the costs for those who actually need it. In order to keep these prices from being driven up, the Republican plan will now charge people in the individual healthcare market a 30% penalty for lapses in health insurance coverage. So, there's still an incentive to get coverage, but it seems less strong, if that makes sense. Similarly, the employer mandate, which required larger companies to provide quote-unquote affordable insurance to their employees or face financial penalties, is also gone. This formed a sort of double-edged sword in practice, as many companies did improve their insurance offerings, but others simply chose to drop insurance altogether and pay the penalty because it turned out to be cheaper. Other subsidies for out-of-pocket expenses in the form of tax credits will also be repealed. These were designed primarily to help some people pay deductibles and make co-payments. Now, another big change comes to premium subsidies, which were tax credits provided to Americans based on income. These were, of course, designed to help out lower income income households and individuals, with the idea being that those people generally need more help affording health insurance because they've got less money to spend on things in general. These subsidies are being done away with and replaced with new ones that are based on age instead, meaning that the older you are, the more subsidies you qualify for. Now, there are still caps for this based on income. For households, this is a cap placed at yearly earnings over $150,000, and for individuals, this is a cap placed at earnings of $75,000. But if you fall underneath those numbers, which the overwhelming majority of people in the United States do, your eligibility for these subsidies will no longer be based on your income, but on your age. Shifting the focus to Medicaid, Medicaid will continue to be expanded as it was under the ACA until 2020, at which point funding will be reduced. To me, this ultimately just kind of looks like passing the problem down a few years, because it's unlikely we'll be able to afford reducing funding to Medicaid. Prices consistently go up for it. I just don't see how that will happen. But as it's written, in 2020, funding for Medicaid will no longer be expanded like it is right now. Finally, older Americans will be losing some protection against higher prices based on their age. Under the current law, plans can charge their oldest customers up to 3 times what they charge their youngest ones. Now, this does make sense because older customers do tend to cost more in general. The older you are, the more health problems can be expected. However, under the new bill, this number becomes up to 5 times what younger customers are charged. And it also gives states the options to set their own limits that can be lower or higher. So, as it stands right now, that's the gist of the new Republican healthcare proposal. So what does this all mean? In short, it looks and feels like the Affordable Care Act in a number of important ways, which is why many Republicans actually aren't too happy with the bill. In fact, I've already seen it referred to as Obamacare Light. The bill does seem to remove some of the regulation that ACA opponents felt limited choices and freedoms, and the bill will generally make healthcare coverage more affordable, ironically, for higher income individuals. For those who are older, sicker, or poorer than average, the new legislation removes a lot of protections and can spell some pretty bad news, especially seeing as Medicaid looks like it won't be getting the funding it needs past 2020. According to a report on the legislation from the Congressional Budget Office, which usually acts as the word of authority on this kind of stuff, although now Republicans are pushing back because they didn't get the news they wanted to hear, this new plan would likely leave 24 million more people uninsured by 2026, when compared with the existing Affordable Care Act. 24 million people is a lot. We're a country of 300 million. So, on the surface, it seems that this bill provides better options for wealthier Americans at a generally lower cost all around, at the expense of subsidies and other measures which currently exist to protect poorer people, and more specifically, poorer older people. This is, of course, the first draft of the bill, and it is highly contested by Republicans and Democrats alike. And of course, there are a lot of holes and issues that are apparent already. So expect to hear lots of changes as the bill makes its way through Congress. I believe it was something like 120 changes were made to the Affordable Care Act before it made its way into law. That's all I've got for you guys on this shorter, simpler episode of The Big Picture. Enjoy the rest of the spring break for those of you who are sharing it with me now. For those of you who are on the Northeast coast, also be sure to enjoy all of the snow. Signing off for WHIP, I'm Tony Pearson. Have a good one.